Welcome to the final part of page 2 for our speciation notes, page 2. We just got done talking about reproductive isolation. The last two pieces we're going to cover are temporal isolation and geographic location. So to start with, temporal isolation is referring to separation because they reproduce at different times. So this could be seasonal, it could be part of a migration process, or it could simply be that one species has become nocturnal while another is diurnal. Okay, and then it would point out that here again, notice this is a change in time of activity. The examples we gave was maybe that seasonal breeding or migration. All right, and then the final piece that we're going to talk about today deals with geographic isolation, and this idea is actually going to be really important in coming videos when we talk a little bit more specifically about some important types of geographic isolation. So it would be important first maybe then to define what geographic isolation is. When we say geographic isolation, separation of populations due to geographic change or dispersal to isolated locations. So the example I want to give here, you'll notice I have kind of South America hanging out in the corner over here. And if we were to zoom in this tiny little blur next to South America, you would see a little island chain. And that little island chain is known as the Galapagos. And I'd already mentioned the importance of the Galapagos to you when I mentioned the work of Charles Darwin and how his work there in the Galapagos, the things that he saw, that really led him to believe that natural selection was the mechanism. And then he came up with some other ideas, this idea of isolation being key for creating new species. And when we look at the separation due to a geographic change, there's a bunch of different examples we could talk about. Darwin's finches is a great example. They came from the mainland, they were blown over to this really small chain of islands, and they actually then had this barrier of, for example, the ocean. Similarly, we could also see we would also see this maybe perhaps for things like rivers. Here again, also maybe for some mountains. And then also perhaps if we had a set of mountains on this side for a valley division. All of these are going to be barriers to organisms getting across these and being able to interbreed. If they don't interbreed, there's no gene flow. They're not sharing those alleles. They're not interbreeding. They're not passing on those traits to offspring. And as a result, if enough time passes, they're not going to be able to interbreed. All right, so we will pick this up. We'll talk more about this tomorrow.